Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. 90 Day Fiancé. I'm afraid Natalie Mordovtseva wants Mike Youngquist to be unhappy. Is she really that bitter? I've been watching how 90 Day Fiancé star Natalie Mordovtseva is ensuring that Mike Youngquist never gets to taste true happiness. I first saw Natalie in 90 Day Fiancé Season 7 promos. She had the most striking eyes with a blonde hair belonging to a doll. Natalie had met Mike through their mutual friends, but they couldn't have been any different from each other. I thought Mike and Natalie were the definition of opposites attract when it came to their relationship, as they had height, religious, and dietary differences. Natalie still wanted a baby with Mike even before coming to America. She conveniently forgot about it when she came to live with him in Sequim. The baby seemed to have been a storyline that Natalie created for when any of her relationships needed some drama. She even went back to Mike in the Single Life Season 4, asking him to impregnate her. Natalie is that shameless. Natalie had thrown her engagement ring at Mike as he packed his bags at the end of the Ukraine trip in the finale. Natalie wanted nothing to do with Mike, and she even accused him of cheating during the Season 7 tell-all. Natalie claimed Mike had cheated on her. The woman was named Sarah, and Mike had stayed with her the night before Sarah's own wedding. I recall Natalie concluding that Mike and Sarah had slept together. Sarah appeared during the tell-all of Season 8 and quickly made it clear that Natalie's accusations stemmed from her own paranoia. Natalie had supposedly seen Mike shirtless on that night when she had video called him, and she could hear Sarah taking a shower in the background. Natalie and Mike were over during the Season 7 tell-all. Yet Mike did not pull the K-1 visa application, and Natalie was granted permission to come to America. If Natalie didn't love Mike anymore, she would have decided to skip the U.S. move. But she came anyway because it had always been about marrying an American man to Natalie. She didn't care who she was marrying. Watching Mike giving his own fiancé the cold shoulder for an entire season and refusing to return the ring to her gave me secondhand embarrassment. Natalie kept pleading to Mike for the ring. He also called off their wedding at the last minute. However, Mike made the biggest mistake of his life by marrying Natalie out of guilt just a day before her K-1 visa was about to expire. Mike had canceled his wedding because his mother, Trish, had told him to do so. Mike's mother, Trish, was very vocal about her dislike for Natalie and often expressed her frustration on the show. I recall Mike being called a mama's boy and being compared to Colt Johnson. However, Trish had a nagging feeling that Natalie was taking advantage of her son. She got her told you so moment when Natalie left Mike to go date other people in a different state. I agreed with Trish calling Natalie a snake because Trish believed that Natalie primarily came to America to secure a green card and had no genuine intention of building a life with Mike. Natalie left Mike within 3 or so months of marrying him. All that drama of wanting to marry Mike was just so she could continue to live legally in the U.S. by becoming his wife. If I'm not wrong, Natalie never really told Mike why she was splitting with him. She was never clear about it because there was no reason for her to break up. Natalie had never had any feelings of love towards Mike. She wanted to date other people and probably find someone better to replace Mike with. For that to happen, Natalie had to get out of Sequim, which she did. Natalie went to St. Petersburg in Florida, and it's where she met her current love interest, Josh, after a series of failed dates with a man named Johnny. Natalie saw that Josh was single and the CEO of a modeling agency. What more could a woman who wanted to become a model and actress want? Natalie started rubbing her new man in Mike's face. To me, it was easy to see that even Josh was not Natalie's numero uno choice. Natalie could have chosen to date someone better than Josh after she broke up with him on 90 Day. The Single Life Season 3, but she didn't. Natalie had dumped Josh for refusing to give their relationship a label and to give her a baby. Yet Natalie kept using the car Josh gave her and lived in the apartment he was paying for. Natalie was perhaps going to stay put until Josh didn't call her his girlfriend. For that to happen, Natalie had to get divorced from Mike. So far, I have not come across any news report confirming that Natalie and Mike have been divorced. Mike let Natalie take advantage of him for all these years, but now Mike has a girlfriend he's been with for 2 years. Mike wants to marry Sarah, but can't since Natalie is still not signing the divorce papers and letting him move on. She was worried she would get kicked out of the country if she signed. The 90 Day Fiancé star's self-absorbedness will ensure that Mike never feels an iota of happiness ever, as long as she is around. Natalie Mordovtseva and Mike Youngquist's tumultuous relationship on 90 Day Fiancé has always been a roller coaster of emotions, misunderstandings, and intense moments. From the very beginning, it was clear that these two were not a match made in heaven. Yet their complicated journey has sparked questions, most recently surrounding Natalie's behavior toward Mike. Is she truly bitter, or is there something deeper at play in her treatment of him? The idea that Natalie might want Mike to be unhappy isn't as far-fetched as it seems, and here's why. The cracks in their relationship. Natalie and Mike's relationship was fraught with difficulties almost from the moment they met. Mike's laid-back, country-living lifestyle contrasted sharply with Natalie's more high-maintenance and ambitious demeanor. At first, their physical attraction seemed to outweigh their differences. But as the months passed, those differences became harder to ignore. From cultural clashes to communication breakdowns, it often seemed like they were on different wavelengths. Mike appeared to be less concerned about the future, preferring to live in the moment, while Natalie was focused on her long-term goals, including securing a marriage and stable life in America. Unfortunately, these differing priorities led to numerous arguments, with Natalie often expressing her frustration and disappointment. As time went on, Natalie's resentment began to show more clearly, especially when Mike failed to meet her expectations. The impact of disappointment and unrealistic expectations. One of the most significant issues in their relationship was the gap between Natalie's idealized version of love and the reality of living with Mike. She had come from Ukraine, leaving behind her home and life to build a future with him. Yet Mike didn't seem as invested in the relationship as Natalie had hoped, leading to her growing feelings of frustration. Throughout the seasons, Natalie repeatedly voiced her grievances, accusing Mike of not being supportive enough emotionally and not fully understanding her needs. Her disappointment was often palpable, especially when Mike would shut down or withdraw during their arguments. This led to several emotional confrontations where Natalie seemed desperate for validation, but it only caused further rifts between them. Was she disappointed by Mike's actions, or was it the realization that her dream of a perfect life in America was slipping through her fingers? Is she really that bitter? At this point in their journey, many viewers have questioned whether Natalie's bitterness toward Mike is genuine or if it's a defense mechanism. Natalie often appeared to be harboring deep resentment, particularly when it came to Mike's apparent lack of urgency about their relationship. However, bitterness can sometimes be a mask for deeper emotions like hurt, confusion, and fear of failure. In this case, it seems that Natalie's frustration with Mike stemmed from feeling abandoned, misunderstood, and unimportant. The fact that Natalie's behavior often veered toward passive-aggressive remarks or emotional outbursts instead of direct confrontation suggested that she was holding on to a lot of unresolved emotions. She might have felt that her sacrifice of leaving her country and uprooting her life for this relationship wasn't being appreciated in the way she had imagined. This sense of sacrifice turned into bitterness, which often translated into her belittling Mike's attempts at reconciliation or even kindness. But there's another side to this dynamic. Throughout their time on the show, Natalie did seem to care for Mike at moments, particularly when things weren't so tense. She would show affection, support, and even vulnerability, suggesting that beneath the bitterness, there were still traces of love. This seesawing behavior left fans questioning whether Natalie was acting out of a place of love or bitterness. The theory of wanting Mike to be unhappy. Now, the theory that Natalie might want Mike to be unhappy is certainly a provocative one. At its core, it suggests that Natalie's actions toward Mike, her constant criticisms, and her coldness may not just be a result of her frustration, but could also be motivated by something deeper, perhaps a desire for Mike to feel the same level of hurt she does. When someone feels deeply wronged or betrayed, they may want the person who hurt them to experience the same kind of emotional turmoil. It's possible that Natalie's bitterness stems from her inability to let go of her hurt, so she tries to elicit a similar response from Mike. She might want him to feel the weight of her disappointment, especially when she perceives him as taking her for granted. This could explain why, even when Mike tries to make amends, Natalie often doesn't seem satisfied and keeps pushing him further away. Furthermore, when she watches Mike appear unaffected by their issues, it might deepen her desire to see him struggle emotionally. In some ways, it's a warped attempt to level the playing field. If she's in emotional pain, why shouldn't he be? This type of thinking isn't uncommon in toxic relationships, where one partner feels neglected or unimportant, and their desire for validation becomes a destructive force. A possible underlying fear of failure. But there's also the possibility that Natalie's actions aren't fueled by bitterness at all, but rather by a fear of failure. Her journey to America, her hopes for a better life, and her dreams of a perfect relationship with Mike may have felt like they were all slipping through her fingers. In this context, her behavior might not be rooted in anger, but in a desperate attempt to regain control. She might push Mike away as a way of protecting herself from the pain of a relationship that's not working. Natalie's emotional volatility might stem from this fear, not from a desire to see Mike suffer. Instead, she could be trying to defend herself from the crushing disappointment of seeing her dreams fall apart. This fear of failure might manifest in bitterness, as it's easier to be angry than to confront the deep sadness of unrealized expectations. Conclusion: so is Natalie really that bitter? Perhaps, but it's likely that her bitterness is rooted in a much more complex emotional landscape. Beneath the surface, there may be feelings of insecurity, fear of failure, and a desire to be understood. As for whether she wants Mike to be unhappy, it's hard to say definitively, but it's clear that her actions have certainly pushed him to his emotional limits. In the end, it might be easier for Natalie to act out of bitterness than to face the vulnerability of being emotionally open and honest with Mike. Whether she truly wants him to suffer or is simply reacting out of a deep well of hurt is something only she knows. But one thing is certain, the journey of Natalie and Mike is far from over, and their struggles are bound to keep viewers captivated as they navigate their complicated relationship.